Hey you, it's true with a review of the new THOR. As could be expected, this apocalyptic thunder god is a storm unit, but a slow one at that, with a speed of just 353. Her skillset is also somewhat similar to New Anya though. Let's dive right in. Starting with her passive skills, THOR will become a guardian for 100 time units when she enters the battlefield, and each time she defeats a non-conjured enemy with an attack while on the battlefield. She cannot become a guardian from any other skills. While THOR is a guardian, she has 50% damage reduction from attacks, has stun and sleep immunity, and each time a unit gets the turn, she will be healed for 100% of max HP. Now, given her high HP, this would be quite broken if it wasn't for the 100 time unit limitation. Now granted, as long as she gets kills, she can stay a guardian for a while. And if she is not a guardian, her attack is increased to 1.5x, basically a perma enrage that also does not stack with normal enrage effects. She also has lifesteal, so each of her attacks heal her for 100% of damage dealt. She is also immovable, somewhat important nowadays, and she enters the battle with an instant death ward, which is also a good thing to have in a Dark Musashi meta. An instant death ward prevents the unit from being immediately defeated without damage by a non-boss enemy once, and is then removed. Now that was just her God of Thunder passive. Her second one is called Unshackled Power, and the first time THOR is damaged by an enemy attack, that enemy's active skills are disabled for 20 time units plus 20 time units per awakening, so up to 100 time units if THOR is fully awakened. And THOR will also have her current time units reduced by 50. Whenever she uses Thundering Wrath, this effect is reset so it can trigger again. Each time she takes damage from an attack and survives until after the end of the turn, 2 random enemies are weakened and granted rage wards. Then all non-burning allies are purified. Now this is a normal purify, so it doesn't get rid of things like lethal poison, but it does get rid of frostburn, for example. The passive weakening and rage warding of enemies, of course, is also nice. 0.75x on their attacks if they are weakened. And additionally, THOR comes with a hold ground plus. So if she would be defeated, she instead survives with 1 HP and then cannot be defeated until her next turn. Of course, executes ignore this. Plus, whenever another non-conjured ally on the battlefield is defeated, this hold ground plus effect is reset so it can trigger again. And then also all allies become purified, again normal purify, and gain the armor status effect. Armor of course granting 50% damage reduction once against a non-armor ignoring attack that is incoming. Now quite the hefty passive side. How about her actives? These are actually a little bit shorter. Her first one is called Hammering Blade, 50 time unit cost, gives 2 spirit, 400% damage to one enemy, 500% if she has survived for 100 time units, 600% if she has survived for 200 time units or more on the battlefield. So a bit of a survivor scaling in this skill. It also ignores enemy damage reduction effects and any effects of non-boss enemies that would prevent the target from being defeated. Now also keep in mind, if she is not a guardian, those damage multipliers are multiplied with 1.5, so this deals up to 900% armor ignoring execute damage. Quite hefty, but if she is a guardian, the damage at first is gonna be rather low with just 400%. However, it doesn't even end there, because then she also stuns the target for 100 time units, and if the target has 200 time units or more afterwards and is not a stun absorber, then they can no longer be stunned by Hammering Blade unless they leave the battlefield. So somewhat reminiscent of Kronos' first active skill. However, this one of course is gonna be much more powerful. And then her other spirit positive skill that is called Thunder Shield. It is an instant skill, 1 time unit cost, and for each ally on the battlefield that is sleeping or on or below 95% of max HP, allies gain 1 spirit and a random enemy is stunned for 100 time units. Then all allies on the battlefield heal for 1000%. of the user's attack are purified and granted a stun ward and a sleep ward. This is only usable if any ally on the battlefield is on or below 95% of max HP, and this skill becomes locked for 50 time units after use. Now definitely a strong shield skill, but in my eyes not quite reaching the extreme power of something like Valkyrie Reset's Elemental Cure. And then we have her Disabling Bolts, yet another instant skill, 1 time unit cost, 2 spirit cost. The enemy with the lowest current time units and the enemy with the highest current time units have their active skills disabled for 50 time units. So yet another way for her to disable enemies. Basically the first unit that can do the disable in 2 ways. Disable probably still the strongest thing in the game. It cannot be purified and means a unit will lose the turn if they get the turn during while being disabled, as if they were sleeping. This Disabling Bolts skill is only usable if there are at least 2 non-imposter enemies on the battlefield, and it also becomes locked for 50 time units after use. It's usable 5 times per battle, so she will spam it in the beginning whenever she gets the chance to do it, which seems sensible, and she can kinda lock out enemies, given that her other skill, Hammering Blade, costs 50 time units. She can have some nice recurring theme here. The only downside on this one is, of course, that it's disabling the lowest and highest current time units, so it's not something that she can choose, and if the time units on the enemies are already high, then this disable will not do anything. Then again, we have some get turns, so it can still be relevant. And then her final skill costs 3 spirit. It is called Thundering Wrath. Costs also 70 time units. Not sure if I already said that. And this one is a bit of an odd one, I have to say. It's 600% damage to one enemy, which is nice. It ignores enemy damage reduction effects and any effects of non-boss enemies that would prevent the target from being defeated, which is also nice. However, it's only usable if the user is not a guardian and only 3 times per battle. So this is quite an expensive skill, I have to say, for what it does. Now, you have to keep in mind that this skill will always deal 900% unmitigated damage. So this is basically a death sentence for any unit that isn't a high HP guard or semi-guard, if we are talking about very similar levels and resources spent. This is kind of her way to become a guardian again, given that when she gets a kill, she becomes a guardian. But the odd thing about it is it costs 3 spirit, it costs 70 time units. The Hammering Blade, as soon as she survived for 200 time units or more on the battlefield, will also already deal 600% and benefits from the same scaling if she's not a guardian. It has lower time units, actually is coming out 5 spirit ahead of the Thundering Wrath. And so after 200 time units, Hammering Blade is always better than Thundering Wrath, even if she can use Thundering Wrath. And for the first 100 time units, there's no way she can use Thundering Wrath, given that she will still be a guardian. Yeah, this is a bit odd, I would say. But, you know, it is what it is. The good thing is, the active skills are pretty short, as you just noticed. The other question, though, is that a good sign for Thor's power? Now, her passives are good. She has the Disable, which is something to point out, given that any unit that came with any kind of disable mechanic, and those were New Anya, Kronos and Zeus so far, all made it into the top 5 at the very least in my true SSR world rankings. Now, can Thor do it too? She has potential, but the current Dark Musashi meta and all kinds of other stuff in the current meta might not be super ideal for her. Her speed is on the lower side. She doesn't really have any kind of get turn mechanic except for that reduction when she gets hit. So usually she will be able to do something once she gets attacked. She is a bit of a Frostburn counter, although not an insanely broken one at that, I would say. Things will also come down to her AI a little bit. Her hate does increase the longer she stays alive on the battlefield, which makes sense given that the Hammering Blade gets more powerful. One thing I don't like so much about her active skills is that neither of them ignores guards, so she will just most likely hit somebody like New Anya and get disabled, which isn't too bad to be fair, because all of her active skills are rather costly in terms of time units, or costly enough for the disabling from New Anya not to matter too much. I don't know, it's very hard to put into words. Her active skill set, besides the Thundering Wrath, like I discussed already, looks very nice on paper, but somehow it doesn't get me super excited. I mean, maybe that is still to come, and the passives also make up for it somewhat. Yeah, she's also not stun immune or sleep immune if she's not a guardian, so after 100 time units she will be rather vulnerable to these things. While she is a guardian, she will be very hard to kill, but we have these ignore guard skills nowadays, and her attack output will also be more muted during that time. That she needs a full awakening kind of goes without saying. Yes, she has an awakening scaling, but that's only part of the thing, because she's obviously also very much geared towards that kind of guardian skill set. As such, she will need a lot of HP, and that she gets through the awakenings and the resources you put into her. As a 1-copy unit, there is some merit if you're on a very young server, I suppose. I'm not a huge fan of that idea. The good thing is her being a semi-guardian that also has these increased HP, like we saw with Dark Ludmilla before, can stay relevant for an extended period of time. Not as long as the permanent guards, if we think about New Anya for example as the strongest example, but still. And something that is good about her is that unlike Dark Ludmilla, you don't need to make sure there's no other guardian for Thor to also become a guardian. Granted, this can be a downside nowadays as well sometimes, because of Dark Musashi's absolute slaughter, specifically ignoring guardians. If Thor somehow pulled hate from Dark Musashi early on, she could prevent an onslaught, but usually early on Dark Musashi will kill all the other enemies first. Granted, if there are only imposters and a New Anya and Thor left, you could expect her to hit Thor, hopefully unsuccessfully trying to kill her and giving your team a slight break. But yeah, that's all. I mean, maybe I'm just a bit muted because I was standing at an event today for a very long time and actually just got up from a nap, which could have easily been a full-blown sleep if I didn't still want to record this review in time for Thor's release. Which is to say, I hope you enjoyed the preview battles on the screen. You should wait at least until the Lucky Fountain is released for pulling. I would even recommend to wait 1 week if you're patient enough to also get a look at one of the other new unit leaks. Don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. And as always, thanks for watching.